Shh. Listen carefully. The night is darker than it seems. Shadows stretch longer, and whispers crawl through the silence. This is not just a story, it's a door. Once you step in, there is no way back, so close your eyes, let the darkness surround you, and remember, the things you fear the most are already waiting in the dark. The Collector of Silence. The rain did not fall, it struck. Each drop was a shard, slicing through the air, needling the crooked rooftops and gray streets of Havensbrook. The city looked drowned, as though the color had been washed away, leaving behind only shadows and the low, ceaseless hum of water on stone. Arthur liked it this way. Rain silenced the world. It drove people indoors, forced their heads down, muffled footsteps, and blurred the cries of the desperate. Havensbrook in the rain was his cathedral. Inside his small kitchen, lit by a single naked bulb that hummed with dying electricity, Arthur polished his knife. Its handle was bone, smooth with years of touch, its blade glinting like a shard of frozen lightning. This was no ordinary knife. It was an inheritance. His father's hands, rough as sandpaper, had guided his own boyish fingers around it once. He could still hear that voice, deep, grave, unbending. Precision, Arthur. Respect the seams. Life hides in the seams. The echo of that instruction lived inside him. His father had been a butcher. Arthur was something else entirely, yet he, too, sought the seams, not of carcasses, but of souls. He slid the blade into its sheath against his ribs, where it pressed cold against his body like a second heart. He pulled on his raincoat, the colorless beige that made him invisible in a crowd, and stepped into the night. Havensbrook swallowed him. Its alleys, slick with rain, were veined with broken streetlights and hollow windows. To the city, Arthur was nothing more than a man hurrying home to solitude. But inside him, loneliness was not a mood. It was a parasite, a stone that had sat in his belly since the night his mother abandoned him. He remembered it with suffocating clarity. The way she moved through the house, her suitcase rattling with hurried belongings, the mask of fear across her face. He had crouched on the staircase, peering through the banisters. For one aching moment, she had looked back, straight at him. Her eyes, however, were not hers anymore. They were the eyes of something hunted, animalistic, desperate. And then she was gone, swallowed by the rain. His father had rotted in her absence. A man who once spoke rarely now spoke only to lash out, to criticize, to instruct. The house became a tomb, its warmth stripped away until all that remained was the butcher's block in the basement, the shine of steel and the copper tang of blood. Arthur learned then to hide his emotions, to bury them beneath silence. But deep inside he craved what he saw in others, their laughter, their tears, the bright burning of emotions across their faces. He was like an astronomer watching distant stars, never able to touch their warmth. Until the alley. Until the mugger. Until the moment when his reflex drove steel into another man's body. The look on that man's face, the pure, distilled terror as the scream left his lips, had filled Arthur with something he had thought long dead: connection. He had been the center of another's world, if only for a single, final moment. That was the night he became a collector, a connoisseur, not of things, but of screams. And tonight, he had chosen his piece. Clara. He had first noticed her 3 nights ago in the fluorescent aisles of a grocery store. She had been mid-argument with her boyfriend, her voice sharp, her face alive with anguish. Her anger was raw, her sorrow unhidden. She was vivid, real. She was everything Arthur was not, and everything he wanted to consume. Now he followed her home. The rain snapped against her umbrella as she walked, the neon of a distant diner flickering across her path. Arthur moved like a phantom, his steps lost in the storm. Clara felt it, that prickle down her spine, the whisper of ancient instincts that muttered, "You are not alone." She tightened her grip on her umbrella, heels clattering faster against the pavement. The terraced houses on either side loomed silent, their windows blind, uncaring. Arthur quickened, closing the distance. He didn't pounce, didn't shout. He simply appeared at her side, his voice calm, even gentle. "Don't scream," he said. She screamed. It was perfect. A high, crystalline cry of terror torn raw from her chest. His pulse quickened, not from excitement, but from awe. This was the music he lived for. He seized her wrist, firm but not brutal, guiding her into a narrow alley slick with slime and the smell of rotting garbage. The rain cascaded down brick walls, painting everything in a shiver of silver. Clara was trembling, her eyes wild as she pressed against the wall, tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks. Please, please, I have money. Take it. Just let me go. Arthur didn't answer. He only studied her, the freckles dotting her nose, the chipped front tooth, the way her lips quivered between a sob and a scream. She was not a thing. She was a galaxy of moments and memories, and he was about to split it open. My mother left me, he whispered suddenly. The words startled even him. They slipped from some cracked part of his soul. She looked at me, and then she chose silence. Clara's sob caught in her throat. She blinked at him, confused, and then something softer surfaced in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered, and her voice was not pleading, but sympathetic. Arthur froze. He didn't want sympathy. He didn't want pity. He wanted her terror, her rage, her unraveling. The knife gleamed as he drew it, pressing its tip lightly against her throat, just enough to whisper its promise. Show me, he hissed, his voice shivering with hunger. Not for him, not for anyone else. Show me your truth, for me. Clara's fear was still there, raw and trembling, but it shifted. Her eyes, wide and wet, hardened, and in their depths he saw something he did not expect. Defiance. You're just a sad little man, she spat, her voice shaking but strong. You think this is power? This, she nodded at the blade. This is pathetic. You don't make me afraid, you just make me sorry. Arthur's world cracked. Her words pierced the seams of his being, slicing deeper than his father's cold voice ever had. No, he rasped, pressing harder, drawing a bead of blood. Scream for me. Scream! Clara met his eyes and smiled. It was broken, bloody and brave, a smile of final defiance. No, she whispered. The sound detonated inside him. It wasn't a scream. It was worse. It was silence. It was rejection. It was his mother's eyes at the door all over again. And Arthur broke. A scream ripped from his throat, a sound he had never meant to give away. A sound of rage, grief, and infinite loneliness. It was his scream that filled the alley, not hers. His vision blurred with tears. His father's voice thundered in his skull. Precision, Arthur! Find the seams! But there was no precision now. No artistry. Only a desperate, messy thrust of steel. The knife slipped, tore, and painted the rain with crimson. Clara gasped, then went still. Her scream never came. Arthur's did. The knife clattered onto the cobblestones. It was a brittle, metallic sound, too loud in the narrow alley. Arthur's hands shook as though they no longer belonged to him, his palms slick with rain and blood. Clara slid down the wall, leaving a smeared trail of red that glistened under the weak light of a flickering street lamp. Her eyes, those defiant, burning eyes, had gone glassy, empty. The smile she had given him only moments before seemed to linger on her face like a curse. Arthur stumbled back. His breath came ragged, a broken bellows in his chest. He had waited for the scream, prepared himself for the gift of that final sound. But Clara had not given it. She had taken it from him. She had left him with silence. The silence was worse than any scream. It pressed on his ears, seeped into his bones, gnawed at the seams of his mind. For years, Arthur had thought he was a collector of final sounds, an artisan of last breaths. But now, staring at Clara's slack face, he saw the truth. He was not a collector. He was a thief. A lonely, pathetic thief who stole because he had nothing of his own. His legs buckled. He collapsed into the rain, kneeling in the filth and blood. The rain washed his hands, but no matter how hard he rubbed, he could still feel her skin, still see her defiant smile. For a moment, just a moment, he thought of his mother again, that look in her eyes, that emptiness as she left. He had spent his life chasing the scream that would fill the silence she left behind. And Clara had given him the same silence, but sharper, deeper, deadlier. A sound crawled from his throat, not a word, not a scream. A low, animal whimper that echoed against the bricks. His father's voice cut through it like a blade. Precision, Arthur. Respect the seams. The words drove into his skull, relentless, cruel. He pressed his palms to his ears, trying to block them out, but his father's voice was not outside, it was inside. It had always been inside. The rain seemed to grow louder, heavier, until it roared like 1,000 voices screaming at once. The world tilted, and Arthur staggered to his feet, leaving the knife behind. He couldn't touch it anymore. It wasn't an instrument of precision. It was a relic of failure. He stumbled from the alley. Havensbrook loomed around him, its streets empty, its windows blind. He walked without knowing where, the rain hammering against his trench coat until it clung to him like a second skin. His reflection flashed in the black sheen of puddles, his face pale, hollow, his eyes like pits. He was not a shadow anymore. Shadows at least belonged to something. He was a void, and the void was hungry. The next nights were a blur of wandering. He did not return to his apartment. The walls there whispered too loudly, the butcher's knife set on the counter like an accusing finger. He drifted through alleys, bus stops, beneath bridges where the homeless gathered around burning drums. But everywhere he went, he heard it, Clara's no. That single syllable replayed in his head, a sound sharper than any scream. A refusal, a rejection. He began to see her. Not whole, not human, but fragments. Her smile glinting in the reflection of a shop window, her eyes staring back at him from puddles, her lips whispering in the rain, "You'll never have it." The words gnawed at him, sleepless nights piling into endless days. His hunger sharpened. The silence inside him yawned wider. He needed another scream, a perfect one. A scream so raw it would drown Clara's defiance. So he followed again. A man this time. A drunk stumbling home from a bar, his laughter slurred, sloppy, ugly. Arthur trailed him, hand trembling as it hovered near the knife he had reclaimed. But when the moment came, when the man turned, eyes glassy with confusion, Arthur saw only Clara's face, her smile, her no. He froze. The knife hung useless in his grip. The man cursed, shoved past him, and staggered into the night. Arthur's scream followed him, a ragged howl that tore through the rain, but no one listened. The city swallowed it, indifferent. Days blurred, or were they weeks? He couldn't tell. His body thinned, his cheeks hollowed. He ate little, slept less. His world shrank until it was only rain, silence, and the echo of his failures. The voices grew. His father's commands, Clara's refusal, his mother's silence, all of them overlapping, weaving into a symphony of torment. Sometimes he laughed with them, sometimes he wept. Always he screamed. But Havensbrook was a city used to screams. No one noticed. One night he found himself back at the alley, the one where Clara still lived in blood and memory. The rain poured heavier than ever, the bricks slick, the shadows deep. Her shape stood there, not a memory this time, not a hallucination. She was there. Clara, as real as the night he killed her. Her hair plastered to her face, her eyes gleaming with defiance. Arthur fell to his knees. The knife lay before him, rusted now, but gleaming faintly in the lamplight. "Please," he whispered, his voice broken. "Give it to me. Scream for me. Just once." Clara smiled, the same terrible, defiant smile, and she said it again. "No." The sound shook the alley, rattled in his skull until it split apart. Arthur clutched his head, screaming into the rain, his voice shredding into nothing, but the silence that followed swallowed him whole. When dawn broke, Havensbrook stirred. People hurried through the rain-slick streets, eyes averted as always. They passed the alley without looking. If they had, they would have seen a man slumped against the wall, his beige trench coat soaked through, his face twisted in a final endless scream. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. The knife lay beside him, and on the wall above him, traced in his own blood, was a single word. The end. This ending makes it a psychological horror, where Arthur becomes haunted not by ghosts, but by silence itself. Clara's defiance lives on, consuming him until he's destroyed.